Statistically speaking, successful entrepreneurs are those who have degrees, have good education, have industry experience, and then spin out and start their businesses.
Hello, and welcome to the Entrepreneurship podcast series. In this episode, Balzhan Orazbayeva is joined by Oleks Osiyevskyy and Guy Levesque from the University of Calgary to unpack what it means to rewire entrepreneurial education. Drawing on the work done at the Hunter Hub for Entrepreneurial Thinking, they challenge the idea of entrepreneurship as just startups and commercialization, and make the case for entrepreneurial thinking as a mindset for creating change across systems.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. My name is Balzhan Orazbayeva. I'm the Manager Strategic Initiatives at UIN and one of the co-editors of the Future of Universities thought book, Entrepreneurial Edition. And it's my pleasure to welcome our guests today to talk about how University of Calgary actually rethinks entrepreneurial education. And entrepreneurship is often still seen as a commercial pursuit only, but today's challenges demand a broader approach. And this is why it's great that we are joined by today's speakers, because at the University of Calgary, this means rethinking how the value is defined and who gets counted as entrepreneur and how systems can be designed to support real-world impact. So in today's episode, Guy Levesque and Oleks Osiyevskyy from the University of Calgary challenge the traditional model of entrepreneurial education, drawing from their wonderful contribution to the Future of Universities thought book, Entrepreneurial Edition. If you haven't read it yet, please do so. Just would like to say a few words about our speakers today. First of all, thanks so much for joining us. Guy Levesque is the Executive Director, Hunter Hub for Entrepreneurial Thinking at the University of Calgary, and Oleks Osiyevskyy is Associate Dean, Policy and Program Development, Faculty of Graduate Studies at the University of Calgary. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I should add a new title that will be added to Olex's list as the incoming academic director for entrepreneurial thinking at the University of Calgary as of March 1st. So we're looking really forward to working closely with Oleks during his mandate as incoming academic director.
Congratulations. It's such an honor to celebrate together with you today. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing from both of you. So we might as well just jump straight into it, I would say. And to kick this off, I would like to start with something that you both were talking a lot about in your contribution, where you've been basically both arguing that entrepreneurship has been framed too narrowly. So I would like to hear what's, in your opinion, the most damaging, so to say, myth behind that framing, and what language do you use internally to reframe entrepreneurial university, entrepreneurial education beyond commercializations and startups in a way that it still brings a lot of ambition, but at the same time also brings skeptics with you without diluting their intentions?
Oleks, you should kick it off.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Guy, and thank you, Balzhan. So first and foremost, we absolutely need startups and new ventures. They create energy for our economies. A lot of things can be done only by startups because large organizations cannot do it. However, we believe that defining entrepreneurship only as commercialization, only as startup, starting new high growth venture is misleading, and sometimes it is too narrow definition, and unfortunately it creates harm, but it has also a lot of good as well. From my perspective, from academic perspective, entrepreneurship can be defined in Schumpeterian terms, as Joseph Schumpeter defined it 100 years ago, as entrepreneur is an agent of change. And building on this definition, entrepreneurs are agents of change, the system that solve problems, that innovate within the constraints of existing system. And only small part of them are those who start new ventures. Entrepreneurs are also those people who are doing social enterprises or charities or nonprofits to solve societal issues. Entrepreneurs are also public administrators who are trying to change the systems they operate in, public regulations, bureaucracy. Entrepreneurs can be also academic entrepreneurs who introduce new ideas, new programs. So entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial thinking is how to be an agent of change within the constraints of the system. Of course, entrepreneurship includes discovery, invention, innovation, and also operating, getting the things done. But we believe that this definition serves the purposes of developing our students, boosting the productivity of national economies much better.
Yeah, and perhaps Balzan can add to Olex's comments. When the Hunter Family Foundation made Canada's single largest gift in history to a post-secondary institution to create the Hunter Hub, they had three parts to their vision. One is that we'd be accessible across all 13 schools and faculties at the university, so not just to the School of Business or the School of Engineering. So a lot of the misconception and a lot of the narrow definition comes from really a structural challenge in that in the history, especially in Canada, most entrepreneurship centers were embedded within a particular school, faculty, or department and giving them a very particular persona. So the Hunter family was very clear, let's make this accessible. So let's not have the Hunter Hub be part of a particular school or faculty. The second one, as Oleks pointed out, agents of change. The Hunter Hub uses the word change makers because we want to transform ideas into impact, and impact has 100 different meanings. One of them might be a startup or a new venture, but all of the examples that Oleks shared are quite relevant to the community that we serve here. So, the Hunter family was very intentional in naming us the Hunter Hub for entrepreneurial thinking. And our job, Oleks, mine, and my team, is really to socialize what entrepreneurial thinking means and what the definitions of entrepreneurial thinking convey.
I really appreciate the holistic and more so agnostic approach that you're taking in defining entrepreneurship. And especially, it's even now visible in your new title, Oleks, as well. Entrepreneurial thinking and acting is at what I think we're indeed are talking about today. But one thing I also wanted to follow up on, because in your thought book contribution, Oleks, and this is the question to you, you've been also sharing some very interesting results from that study that you did, where you were looking at the concept of intrapreneurship and how it is actually a getaway to later independent entrepreneurship. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that and tell us what surprised you most in that data, perhaps?
So starting about 5 or 6 years ago, I was fascinated with the idea about probably misconception dominant in our societies about a typical profile of entrepreneur. And it seems like when thinking about entrepreneurs, what comes to mind is Silicon Valley type of young male or female who are starting their business, dropping out of college in their early 20s in order to develop something multi-billion. However, in 2020, there was a really interesting study in American Economic Review, a really interesting study that carefully looks at thousands of high growth ventures in the United States, the fastest growing ventures and large ventures in the United States. And the authors concluded that actually the average age of a founder at the moment of founding of these successful ventures was 45. So an average entrepreneur, everyone starts businesses, different people of different ages start businesses, but successful ventures on average are founded by people in their 40s. In addition, they would usually have substantial industry experience before founding their venture. So I really wanted to follow up on this. I really wanted to understand maybe there is a way to develop entrepreneurial capabilities in a corporate environment first, by being responsible for product launch, for getting your company to new markets, getting major changes in your organization, which is termed intrapreneurship. So in our 2022 study, we looked at about 60 different countries, hundreds of thousands of observations across different countries. It is based on Global Entrepreneurship Monitor data. And what we basically find is that, this is where I can say most of the entrepreneurship in the country happens thanks to experience that future entrepreneurs are gaining in their industries acting as intrapreneurs. So essentially, this misconception, drop out of college and start the next Facebook, is probably misleading. As a social scientist, I am always careful, probably misleading or not. I'm talking about averages and statistics. So statistically speaking, successful entrepreneurs are those who have degrees, have good education, have industry experience, and then spin out and start their businesses. This is actually a successful pathway to entrepreneurship, and most of the successful enterprises in the country are created by people that already acquired entrepreneurial experience. Again, I also have to say, I am not against startups. We need startups, and people founding startups in different stages in their life. You have to try. Startup is an experiment. If something doesn't work, you pivot, you get corporate job, and then again, you startup later. However, statistically speaking, we should not ignore that successful entrepreneurship usually engages intrapreneurial experience on behalf of the founders.
Yeah, and the question is, so why 40, 45 age ranges? Because they've had an opportunity to apply problem solving, creativity, systems thinking, understanding bureaucracy, friction, problem definition, understanding how to serve and listen to customers and clients. So the more we can give those experiences to students who are in the post-secondary system, the quicker they become accustomed to all of those elements of lived experience that lead to successful entrepreneurship through whether it's academic, experiential learning, or the practice of entrepreneurial thinking and entrepreneurship as happens here at the Hunter Hub.
That is an awesome segue, I think, for me to ask you, Guy, actually, how would you translate that notion into entrepreneurship education? So how do you teach that agency of being a change maker, entrepreneur, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more how you would approach that at your university.
The word agency is one that has now become a very popular word in describing how we empower people. And, that's the word that we use at the Hunter Hub is igniting, inspiring, empowering, and equipping. So for us, agency means, do you have a plan? Do you have a vision? Do you have a goal? And are the right supports and the right environment and the right community around you to support you in feeling as if you're part of a community and part of a movement as an individual who wants to pursue your entrepreneurial journey, whether that leads to social, health, new venture, startup, whatever the outcome is. What we teach, actually, what we say is that the reason why Oleks and I are such a dynamic duo is because we cover the gamut of the academic, the teaching, the experiential learning, and the practice or the practicing of entrepreneurship, which is what happens at the Hunter Hub. So there's a beautiful continuum of experiences for the students. And when I say students, it's undergraduates, graduates, postdocs, alumni. We have a program reserved strictly for graduate students and postdocs, to which we now have this year a faculty member from our School of Medicine and 2 staff members are participating. So we are slowly growing the understanding that entrepreneurial thinking is not just about a particular persona, a particular lane. And so we do that by making sure that we create these communities within the Hunter Hub community of people who've done it, people who look like peers, people who have been in the situations where undergraduates and graduate students have been just a few years removed, so that they have role models and peers that they can seek out advice and understanding of what the realities are between the continuum of what they have learned in class through an entrepreneurship course or module, to what they've learned in an internship, to what they learn in the Hunter Hub as they're working on their passion project or their startup or their idea. Putting all those things together creates this environment that makes the University of Calgary, which, by the way, turns 60 years old in April. We are an extremely young university in a highly entrepreneurial community in Calgary and province in Alberta. So we have so many ingredients that make it possible for us to really push and develop and create this large movement around entrepreneurial thinking here at the University of Calgary.
Speaking of your university, I was wondering if maybe either of you could comment on how actually the university became so entrepreneurial in everything that it does, including the way you educate change makers. But what would be, so to say, maybe Alex, you can respond to that, this sort of small rule change that you've seen that helped unlock that experimentation and that sort of spirit of the university?
I have been with the University of Calgary for 16 years now, with some breaks for positions in other places, but I have been always coming back here. And first thing, where it is all coming from and why the whole entrepreneurship emphasis is emergent here. This is probably related to where we are. The province of Alberta is a western province in Canada, and we still have this spirit of can do, this attitude that you can get the things done. You can start your business or you can change the system. And as a young university, we got this from our community. We are surrounded by supporters. Our graduates are getting the things done in Alberta, in Calgary. So it is just, we are in the right place. Now, going to what kind of things are really making an impact, what I see. From a bigger perspective, we have a succession of very strongly entrepreneurial focused university leaders, presidents who would put entrepreneurial thinking at the core of our strategy. And it is not only our current president, but before different perspectives on entrepreneurial thinking emerged, but it was always core of our strategy. And now what kind of things actually have an impact. University as a system is quite bureaucratic, is quite path dependent, and for good reasons. Higher education has been like that last 700 years, and of course it's hard to change anything in this system. However, what I notice quite useful is idea of piloting. So if you want to do something crazy at the University of Calgary, well, positively crazy, if you have done your homework and you can explain potentially why it might work, in most cases you would be given an opportunity to pilot, be it pilot a course, a program, an approach, a procedure, a system. We are quite keen on piloting things, and some of the pilots work, some of the pilots do not work. And I actually see that this empowers entrepreneurs within University of Calgary to try things.
Yeah, and to add to that, Balzan, the University of Calgary's makeup in terms of research and innovation revenues were very unique in that over 35% of the research revenues we have are driven from academic industry partnerships. So because we are a young university, we've attracted faculty who are interested in solving problems. And with this, I guess, this exchange and this circle between academia and industrial problems that have emerged in the history of oil and gas and energy in our economy and community, it's created this flywheel of coming to the university to seek solutions. And so that has really shaped the University of Calgary's, I think, personality. But to point, I saw that Leanne put a question in the chat about social innovators. And so one of the way we reach out to social innovators and people who don't want to create startups is by offering programming and supports and activities that are not strictly about startups. If everything we do or did was, do you want to do a startup? Come to the Hunter Hub. It then becomes a bit of exclusionary conversation. So one of our most important programs is called Map the System. And for some of you online, you will know that it's a program that was created by Oxford, and it really is about systems thinking. We don't use the word entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial thinking, startups, new ventures, commercialization, IP. We ask teams to tackle really tough social, economic, political problems and map out the indicators, the parameters, the variables, the reasons, the causes that lead to that particular problem. And we were lucky enough that the team that won locally here at the University of Calgary last year went on to compete nationally and then globally at Oxford last July and finished third in the world. And it was about understanding why wait times for hip and knee replacement surgeries in Alberta were so long. That was 2 medical residents, a student at the faculty or the School of Medicine, an engineering student, and a business student who got together to kind of map out that system. So offering programs and making them high profile, and just as important as the traditional startup kind of boot camps and startup programs that almost every entrepreneurship center has in across the country and the world, we have a diversified portfolio or menu of programs and supports that then reaches to some of the most entrepreneurial people that we know are nurses, social workers, educators. So we've got a solutions lab competition coming up on social housing. So creating those opportunities that are not traditionally technology or research based is really critical to our success of reaching out across all 13 schools and faculties.
The UIIN Conference 2026, where universities, industry, and innovators meet to shape the future. Join us in Stockholm for 3 days of insight, inspiration, and impact. Hear from global thought leaders, expand your network, and be part of the conversations driving collaboration forward. Submit your abstract and secure your place now at uiin.org/conference.
Fascinating. I really like the social angle and that we do not always have to use the word entrepreneurship to actually describe a change maker in action. With that, maybe I could quickly touch upon something that I wanted to also learn about Hunters Hub. And I know that Hunters Hub's mandate is to build the best entrepreneurial talent pipeline in the country. And I think you are on a very good track with doing that. But Guy, maybe you could describe how that pipeline actually looks like. So if you can describe how do you support students and researchers along the way?
We contribute to building the best entrepreneurial talent pipeline in the country. I think that most of the actors, performers, supporters in the community of Calgary agree that we have all those ingredients to create the best entrepreneurial talent pipeline. We have a number of young, successful entrepreneurs that are much younger than the 45 years of age that Oleks referenced a little earlier, who can demonstrate that, in fact, we are able to have an idea, think about it, build it, scale it, grow it, and be extremely successful in Calgary without having to relocate or go to other jurisdictions. So that's the basis for the building the best entrepreneurial talent pipeline, and we're just one of many actors. And referencing my response to Leanne's question just a few minutes ago, we have a number of different persona, people who come to the Hunter Hub for very different reasons. Some of them are just curious and they just want to dip their toe in the water. What does this mean, entrepreneurial thinking and entrepreneurship? Give me an opportunity to explore it without having to commit to a significant lift or effort on my behalf, all the way to creating an environment where people who are spending 6, sometimes 7 days a week at the Hunter Hub, working day and night on their startups, typically recent alumni who are pursuing commercialization activities from their master's or PhD or postdoctoral work. So creating these personas and everything in between. So once you have somebody who's curious, you want to convert them into people who are creative or convinced that they are interested in entrepreneurship, and then giving them the opportunities to start creating, start constructing, working on their idea, and bringing them around people who are at different stages. So the idea is, if we were only to support kind of the work around people who are curious, if there's nothing to offer them after that, then we really haven't done our job. So when we talk about pipeline, I know that it has a sense of direction or flow, but I like to think of the Hunter Hub as a bunch of virtuous circles that include undergraduates, alumni, experts and advisors and mentors from the community, bringing actors and funders and investors from around the country into our community, so that you've got all of these collision and connection points that create not a pipeline within a community. And the more people feel like they have a sense of belonging and that this is actually something that I want to do, and especially in today's world, as in Canada, youth unemployment is on the rise. The job market is getting heavily constricted for youth. I'm 18 to 35. So entrepreneurial journeys are a critical alternative to the traditional academic pathway or the pathway going to a particular job in the public sector or health sector. And so pipeline for us is not just about one direction, but it's about being engaged in many circles and exploring different opportunities. And I think the final comment is, one of the things that we do most importantly here is we want to make sure that the people who come to the Hunter Hub are here because they want to be an entrepreneur or they want to be entrepreneurial. There are people who are still thinking that it's the glamorous, tell me how to pitch and I'll go get millions of dollars in front of investors. So there are people who want to be or live or experience entrepreneurial journey, and then you have people who want to play the entrepreneurial journey. And so we want to make sure that those who are just here to play understand that there's a significant reality behind what undertaking an entrepreneurial journey is all about. And so that to us are all the elements that construct this idea of creating the best pipeline.
I'm also noticing that we're receiving more questions, so I perhaps would like to go to some of those as well. So, Serena, thank you so much for your question. How do you treat innovation versus entrepreneurship practices in education?
If it is possible, I would like to unite this question with the next question as well. If you allow me, I believe there is a synergy between them. So the second question is about how faculties can incorporate entrepreneurial thinking in academic programming. And part of it is innovation versus entrepreneurship. So my main approach here is the following. You do not have to do it alone. So if a faculty member needs to incorporate or is thinking about incorporating ideas about innovation or entrepreneurship in their courses, the suboptimal approach is to reinvent the wheel and try to do it alone. My suggested approach is to join a community of practice of entrepreneurial thinking educators on campus or create this community of practice. So in our case, Hunter Hub, Office of Signature Learning Experience, of which I will be part of, we are creating modules that are easy to be packaged and changed slightly for particular context, be it education, nursing, or social work. And these modules can be easily incorporated into existing courses to make them entrepreneurship focused. Again, my point is, don't do it alone. Create a community of practice to create modules, tools that for your university, that will be signature for your university.
And marrying innovation, entrepreneurial thinking, experiential learning, all those elements. We, at the Hunter Hub, we're a team of 20 people or so. And every day, every minute, we're thinking about how to make that experience fantastic for our University of Calgary community. So we are really a resource center of excellence to help our faculty members who understand the importance of putting in an element of experiential or reality to their coursework. Quite often, we're working very closely. So the Faculty of Nursing last year released or launched a certificate of professional practice in entrepreneurship, and it really is about problem solving. And so we are the center of excellence to help incorporate, and we work with our faculties and schools to co-deliver programs. We're going to be launching something very soon in the summer with the School of Medicine and our Hotchkiss Brain Institute, because every faculty school discipline, the entrepreneurial thinking has some different nuances because of the particular constraints or parameters of the particular discipline and the disciplinary methodologies. So a lot of that is really through dialogue and being seen as the one-stop shop, or as I like to call us, the epicenter for all things entrepreneurial. And so we convene, we're kind of the grease that makes connections happen, but also the glue that holds the whole entrepreneurial ecosystem at the university together. And it really is about saying, hey, you don't have to think about these things in a vacuum, as Oleks was saying. Doing it together and coming to solicit the experts who actually marry the academic to the practicing is really the best way of doing it. And the University of Calgary has done an amazing job over the last 10 years of doing that.
Thank you so much, both, on this wonderful note. Unfortunately, we'll have to stop, but I just want to say thank you, and also thanks to all of our audience for being so proactive and being so curious. I very much enjoyed the conversation. And again, thank you so much for your not just book contribution, also for joining us for this fantastic fireside chat. For all of the ones who are joining us later, this event is part of the free fireside chat series, and we also have a range of more in-depth events such as masterclasses and how-to sessions, but also some of the training courses. And this is part of the podcast as well, so there are more interesting episodes for you to check out. And don't forget that UN members get complimentary access and discounts on these services. So with that, I would just like to say thank you to all of you, and especially to Oleks and Guy for joining me today. It was a pleasure to learn more about the wonderful job that you do at the University of Calgary and Hunter's Hub. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Balzan. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, friends.
Thank you for listening to today's discussion. Follow UIN on LinkedIn, and if you're enjoying our podcast, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review in your podcast platform of choice to help other people find this content too.